So we have this big misconception that we've got to use light shots when we're peaking. In some instances, that's correct. In some instances, it's far from correct. So what we need to do is sit there and establish that every thrower is going to use a light shot at a different time based off of their ability to adapt to those implements. Some athletes can adapt very, very quickly, and we want to get to the point with those specific athletes that can adapt very quickly to light implements that they can get close to peak season, and we can use a heavier implement or a competition implement to potentiate their body and potentiate their nervous system, and then lead to a very specific setting that's going to replicate what they're going to be experiencing, the intensity that they're going to experience when they're throwing in a competition. So that's the first step that we have to factor in. The second step is I actually like to use shots on a very, very macro basis. So if I have an athlete that I believe can throw 20 meters, 2 years out from when I think that they should throw 20 meters, I want to establish in their body that they can throw 20 meters. So if it's a female and they have to throw a 4K shot, and I truly believe that they can throw 20 meters with a 4K implement, I need to see, can they throw a 4K, or can they throw an 8-pounder 20 meters at this point, and in 2 years they can throw 20 meters with a 4K. Can they throw the 3K 20 meters? Can they, or does it have to be a 6-pounder or 2.72 kilo implement 20 meters? So there's two aspects going on there. It's one, we're going to try and figure out how quickly does the athlete adapt, and if they adapt rapidly, well then we want to use the light implements after they're potentiated, and we can peak them with those light implements so that they have to learn how to control the intensity of a competition setting. The second is a very macro, broad perspective where a year to 2 years out, I want to establish in that individual that they are capable of throwing a specific distance, and that specific distance is set by an implement. For a woman, it would be an 8-pounder or a 3K. Typically, it won't be a 272 because that's pretty light. For a male, it'll be a 15-pounder, it'll be a 14.5, a 14-pounder all the way down to a 6K, and that will establish within that 2-year period how far they're going to be able to throw. The third point of using light implements is when we have someone who comes in and they're almost a very dead athlete. They're somebody who can throw a heavy implement very, very well because they can feel it, and they have more proprioception when they're throwing that heavy implement, but they struggle with proprioception with the light implement, and you can look at their results and see that they can clearly throw a heavier implement relative to their competitive marks much better than they throw that light implement relative to their competitive marks. So what the goal then becomes is that we have to figure out how long does it take for them to adapt to that heavy implement, how long, even longer, because oftentimes with these dead individuals, they might adapt in 2 to 4 weeks with a heavy implement, and it might take 8 to 12 weeks to adapt to that light implement. But when they do adapt, they start to wake up their nervous system even more, and they start to learn things a bit quicker, and their body learns movements quicker, and they become a little bit more coordinated. So those are 3 different aspects that all factor into light throwing, and those aspects have to be measured, they have to be recorded, and they have to be tracked so that we can see what individual you're dealing with. But we always have to remember, it's not just throwing light implements at the peak time, at peak season. It's a much bigger picture, and we have to have full comprehension of the feedback that we're getting back from our individuals to optimize our performance.